Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo. I am your host, the Harry Channel, and with me tonight are guests Sora Luna.
Good evening.
Dr. Functional.
Hello.
Mr. Jack Gunski.
Really like that opening music.
You're very welcome. It helps me calm myself down before the show. I really do like that music too. And SkepTok.
Hi, everybody.
How are we all doing today?
Fantastic.
Really?
No.
Very good.
Okay.
Sober.
I had a lovely day. Got to spend a little bit of time with my imaginary girlfriend, and that was nice. And for anybody who doesn't already know, the reason I call her that is because there are friends of mine who I play pool with late at night, and they've never seen her because she's a normal person who goes to bed.
Is she a doctor?
And not a ne'er-do-well like people playing pool at midnight. So,
That's functional.
Oh, let's see. And we have a late arrival of Geodes.
Skep always gets my little
Geodes.
zings.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Whether or not he actually thinks they're good enough to laugh.
No, I enjoy it. They're good. They're good.
Hey, Geo.
Hey,
I think
Geo.
it's kind of a Minions tradition to make bad jokes and bad puns, which is kind of Geode's department.
Mm-hmm.
You're the minister of bad puns.
He's the funniest.
I mean, I do like to administer them regularly. So
It's how geodes get their rocks off.
yes.
The fact that somebody basically cut open a geode, and thanks to what is it called, pareidolia, I think I may be mispronouncing it. You basically get a free avatar because somebody cut open a rock and it looked like your original avatar.
Yes. Well, that's
And
true.
it's so
I mean,
cute.
yeah.
The Cookie Monster.
It's funny. I was on Twitter the other day and I see someone's avatar and I'm like, wait a second, I've seen that avatar before. And then I realized that somebody else had the same avatar as Geode. So, you know, that just took a moment to crystallize.
Gotcha. There you go.
If we're going down this path, I'm just going to
Oh my
leave
god,
right now.
Jack.
So does anybody wish to unburden themselves briefly before we begin the actual show?
I have a sin I need to confess.
Uh-oh.
Okay, go ahead.
Giggity.
I went and got myself SJW hair today.
Really?
Hmm.
Which color did you go for?
Which shade of pink?
Green.
Which side of your head is shaved?
Green.
Gray green. Oh god, I would never do that. You know how long I've been growing out my hair? Holy shit.
You
At
should
that
walk
point,
into
that would be beyond a cry for help. That would be, I would need a doctor stat.
You should walk into a store like a hardware store or something. You go, it's Sir.
Wait. Back up. Green?
Yeah.
Yeah, she got her
Great
hair
green.
colored SJW green.
But Sora's Little Miss Pink. Everything is
No,
pink.
no.
She's the woman who comes home with pink flamingos so she can put them in her bedroom.
That's going to
That
be
was a
for
yard
fall
flamingo.
and winter because it's going to be cold. So you need the jewel tones and the warm tones, and then you get the metallic rose gold hair, which will happen in the
But
fall.
you have to keep
And right now
feeding
it's
them
summer.
algae so they stay pink.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Eat lots of shrimp.
yeah.
My
I will.
world is shattered.
I feel
Yeah.
unburdened.
Well, the God, who that one mashup of, was it Family Jewels? The guy who does a lot of the video game covers. He did it. What's her name? I can't remember. Addie something. I forget. They did a great sort of metal-ish version of the Flamingo song, which is way better than that horrible J-pop thing. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. I'm
No,
old
I
myself.
do. That's not
No,
that's
How
not a high
many shrimp
bar.
do you need to eat to something? You're
Well, you make your skin turn pink. Eat too
Turn
much
pink.
and you'll get sick.
What?
Shrimp are pretty
Good
rich.
sick.
Yeah, that one.
See, I'm only thinking of there's a guy on YouTube who did a song called "I'm a Flamengo," and it
Oh,
basically
that's
described.
different.
Yeah, I know it's different, but God, I fucking love that song.
It is pretty good. It is pretty good. Well, we have a lot of show today. Let me jump right into it.
Just let me know when the Israel question is coming up.
Well, phrasing, people. I feel personally attacked today.
Oh,
Well,
and
Go ahead.
just a quick thing, because I see Mr. Yes is asking, "What's my natural hair color?" It's a like medium to dark brunette. There you go.
But not anymore. Now it's green. It's SJW green.
Well, half is.
So-
It's a balayage.
Oh, okay. Do I want to know what a balayage is? Is that where the bottom part is green and the top part is normal?
But it's faded in the middle, so it's not an ombre where it's a sharp
Where it's faded
delineation.
all the way up, yeah.
It's balayage. It's mixes in all like bits and pieces. So if you do it normal colors like blonde and brunette, it goes out. It looks really pretty. But if it's fake colors, then obviously it's not your natural color. But it has a better effect because you can hide it if you put it in a bun.
I got mine done in gray.
I had gray hair last year.
Cool.
I
went silver. I
Very
really
chic.
love gray.
I like
Thank
that
you.
flesh
It's just
tone.
the high maintenance color to keep up.
Oh, I work on it every day.
Yeah. Just yeah. I mean, the whole hair thing is good. I'm just happy at this point that I still have lots of it, which is good. Because a lot of my friends don't, and it's not like I think about it as like, oh, there's my bald friend. It's like, no, it's just my friend.
Yeah.
I don't do that. And I did one time in front of one of my friends who has been bald for quite some time. I was sitting here just sort of thinking out loud, and I said, man, it really annoys me. My hair grows so damn fast, I have to get it cut all the time.
Dude, one of my
Looked at me and
closest...
said, Harry, that sounds like a really tough problem to have. And he starts rubbing the top of his head, and I'm like, oh, shit. Sorry, man.
One of my closest friends, he's been bald. He's had the horseshoe since, I don't know, 18, 19.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah. I've been shaving my head since I finished high school, and Elwin can probably remind me if it was like a year or 2 or 3, but not too long ago, I decided I was going to grow it out. I grew it out past my ears or whatever, and I still had the same hair. It was like, okay, so I'm not bald, but
I remember. Oh, sorry.
I got to get this party started. So this is the thing that happened. The southeast part of the United States essentially kind of sort of ran out of gas because some hackers thought it would be fun to ransom the gas pipeline company. And you guys already probably know about all this. But what's kind of weird about this is it's got people talking about the similarities between the Carter administration and the Biden administration, which is delicious. One of the best things about not being in charge is you don't have to justify all the things that you do. You can just criticize all the things that the other guy does, which is a much more fun position to be in some ways. But before we get to that, it turns out that somebody decided to drop the hammer on the guys who did the hack.
Ooh.
The DarkSide ransomware affiliate program responsible for the 6-day outage at the Colonial Pipeline this week that led to fuel shortages and price spikes across the country is running for the hills. The crime gang announced it was closing up shop after its servers were seized and somebody drained the cryptocurrency from an account the group uses to pay affiliates.
Ooh, that's
Servers
an
were
inside
seized.
betrayal.
Country not named. Money of advertisers and founders was transferred to an unknown account, reads a message from a cybercrime forum reposted onto the Russian OSINT Telegram channel. A few hours ago, we lost access to the public part of our infrastructure, the message continues, explaining that the outage affected its victim-shaming blog, where stolen data is published for victims who refuse to pay a ransom. God, these are great people. Hosting support, apart from information at the request of law enforcement agencies, does not provide any other information, the DarkSide admin says. Also, a few hours after withdrawal, funds from the payment server, ours and clients, were withdrawn to an unknown address. This is a perfect example of you took on somebody way, way, way too connected for what the game you were trying to play.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, that's a possibility, but I think another possibility is that somebody on their inside decided he wanted to keep all the money.
Yeah, it is incredibly easy to not have your shit stolen for cryptocurrency. Basically, all you gotta do is not give out your password and not have your actual computer taken from you.
Yeah.
If you could do those two things, you could basically keep the money indefinitely.
Well, they probably were using some sort of infrastructure to manage their crypto, because of course they're scamming people all the time, and it's just a cost of doing business. It isn't like just some dude in his basement with his own crypto wallet.
Right.
This is like a whole organization. When you have an organization, then you have to trust people, and one of them may have betrayed them.
That's exactly what I think.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it was because they were offered some kind of bounty.
Yeah, well, the motive for the betrayal may have been, guess what? Today's your lucky day. You don't get to go to jail for the rest of your life. I'll have that password now, please.
Yeah.
Hands were
you can give it to
shaken,
us on
palms were greased.
whatever USB type of key you want. USB 2, USB 3. We're generous that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very understanding.
Yeah.
If it was Russia, it was more like, well, you won't disappear, and you'll be able to see your families tomorrow.
Yeah, you're going to get to keep your arms.
Yeah.
How's that for a deal?
Yeah, I suspect that somebody paid a fairly large amount of money to some very, very scary people. I don't necessarily think this was a government thing, but you know what? Stay tuned to this channel, because we will definitely come back to this if we get more information. I love stuff like this.
Yeah, this is great fun.
I will say it would be very. I don't know what kind of fast food industry exists up in Russia, but it would be funny to see how many of these people end up in those kinds of positions after all this.
You think they're going to stay alive?
I mean, probably not, but at least the one guy might, and it'd be. I have just the
like
the
fries
amusing
with
sight
it.
of- Yeah, exactly.
I have a feeling there's a great espionage movie in this somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be fun when it becomes, Netflix who does the movie, and all of it takes place in Russia with a Netflix diverse cast. It's going to be lots of fun.
There's the Spanish hacker, the black hacker.
You see, Russia and former USSR in general being so spread out as it is, they can do that. It would just look a little bit weird if they're something other than Asian-ish looking, because you've got all the stands there. You can get a very diverse cast. It just if they make it diverse like Bridgerton, then you lost my interest.
Yeah. Well, on to the thing, because like I said, we'll definitely be coming back to this. In terms of the situation with the gas lines and, of course, inflation, people are drawing these Biden as Carter comparisons. Now, as Trump gets further and further away, and the news agencies are realizing that to stay in business, they have to come up with something else sensational. Most of them are still kind of sticking with the narrative. They're doing what they need to do to keep the Biden administration healthy, but a few of them are starting to sort of break. And so this from Real Clear Politics: gas lines inflation spurred GOP's Biden as Carter messaging. And a number of outlets are starting to kind of pick up on this. Growing inflation concerns, violence in the Middle East, and gas stations sans gas. Republicans love the script the news cycle just handed them because it feels like an easy, low-budget summer reboot. They are desperate to cast Joe Biden as Jimmy Carter, and they point to cyber-blocked fuel pipeline as the clearest evidence yet of a nation losing ground. Now,
how is that wrong?
Well, I mean, it's a fine comparison. And of course, Biden rejects the portrayal. I'm sure he said, "Come on, man, I'm that guy."
I mean,
no. Go ahead, Jack.
Sorry. The comparison. I mean, the thing is that it said later in the article. Trump actually says this. Carter was mismanaging things. Biden is actively destroying things, like things that were not problems. He is turning into problems.
Well, part of Carter's Carter made a number of mistakes. I mean, more than we have time to list here. There was his handling of the Iran hostage situation.
Wage
That
and price
didn't go
controls.
particularly well. Wage and price controls started under Nixon.
Yes,
originally.
but he made them worse, and he did not get rid of them.
Exactly. So when Ford was running for re-election, his slogan was "Win, whip
Win
inflation
with
now,"
inflation now.
and he wasn't wrong. And Carter was just like, "Nope, forget that." He was busy, doing the whole jobs growth Keynesian yada 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 thing. All he was doing was really just sort of fanning the flames and being inept otherwise.
Well, he was being told by his economic advisors that inflation was going to sort itself out. And they used to always say, "Do you remember them talking about the business cycle?" My God, that was the most irresponsible things ever. Was them blaming what was obviously an inflationary problem on a simple business cycle. That wasn't what was happening at all. No, that was provable, and they just bald-faced lied to the American people. I mean, the economists, what passed for the economists in the Carter administration. Sorry to go on a rant here, but were absolutely irresponsible in portraying it that way, and it ended up being that some of the monetary decisions, not so much the fiscal policy, but much more the monetary policy, the stuff that controlled the money supply, M1, M2, that were being made at the Fed were completely under the were very heavily influenced by the desires of the executive branch, and they shouldn't be. That's the whole point of having an independent Fed, is that they do things irrespective of the political climate. And who was the Fed? What was his name? The chairman of the Fed back then. I can't remember.
Basically, the question is who was before Volcker.
Volcker. It was the guy before Volcker, exactly. And I can't think of who it was. But anyway, he was.
Well, he did such a good job. That's why we remember him.
God, he was a scoundrel. He was an absolute whore for Gemma. Anyway, how I do go on. So move along with the topic before I say more things.
No, it's okay. Hold on, but can you? M1 is basically the amount of money that's printed. That's the amount of money.
It's the printed money and ready deposits. And,
and M2, can you give us
all that
short one?
Is all that plus savings deposits, short-term savings deposits. Think of your savings and loan. They used to call them savings and loan accounts, savings accounts, and it's just savings accounts plus M1. That's what M2 is.
Yeah, we don't have time to go through real monetary theory as opposed to modern monetary theory, but in a healthy economy, money is doing a lot of things almost simultaneously as it passes from hand to hand to hand. And so there's different ways of measuring the amount of money that's in the economy, because the thing about inflation is you've got a pile of stuff and then you've got a pile of money. And the money is basically the interchange thing that you use when you don't want to just trade thing A for thing B.
Right.
In a nutshell, that's all money is. It's a medium of exchange because it's inconvenient to be trading objects all the time like you're at a damn swap meet.
It's critical to understand what happens when you trade that money and you buy something. What happens is you have made a declaration of trust in essentially that gets expressed as wealth. By buying that, you say, hey, this thing or this service is worth more to me than having this money, which I have a certain amount of faith in. And so the exchange is made. This happens over and over, and wealth actually accumulates. That's the invisible hand in the market that actually creates wealth. It is that exchange of money. And what happens is, if you have too much money, if you've gone to the printing press too many times and printed too much money, and have not increased the rate at which those wealth-creating events occur, you have inflation. And what happens eventually is that your currency, the value of your money, will necessarily be devalued. And it is a simple division problem.
It is, because it's the amount of money relative to the amount of stuff. When you
of goods and services,
more money floating around, it's there. But when you print money and you give it to some people and not others, it's essentially a way of helping some people and hurting other people. It's a hidden tax. And the way in which you distribute the money that you print is kind of important, and that's where the real ugliness comes in.
Well, it also can not to turn this into, it can constitute almost, it has the same effect as an illegal taking, because by advantaging one group of people on some arbitrary characteristic, some immutable group that they're a member of, and these other people are not, you essentially have robbed the other people of this opportunity that I was talking about, to exchange money and lay in trust into the wealth creating events that make an economy successful. In doing that, you deprive a certain segment or certain segments of the populace of the opportunity to participate in economic transactions that a favored few get to participate in.
Hey,
it's just
Skep,
wrong.
But Skep,
Yeah.
I answer everything you just said with, nuh-uh.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the Robert Reich answer. No, that's not true. These asshole and some asshole goes around waving a Nobel Prize he didn't deserve, and Krugman irresponsibly basically just says, no, that's not the way that works. But you wouldn't understand the way it works.
Of course, you were trying to say something, Jack?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Is everything that comes out of when I'm finding it difficult to phrase this, because when you print money and put that money into circulation, that is effectively created money. But does the government actually create all the money that it puts into circulation?
Yes,
or
every bit of it.
So if they make a bill that says $1 trillion will go to this, they actually print $1 trillion worth of bills.
Odd that you should mention that, because they almost did that one time. They were about to do that. They were going to print a $1 trillion bill, and the $1 trillion bill was going to be used to adjust certain complicated reserve requirement things in the federal banking system. I'm not going to get into right here, but they almost created a $1 trillion bill to make an accounting adjustment effectively, so that the government balance of accounts would look better. They almost did that, and they said as long as we hold it tightly, it won't inflate.
Yeah,
and of course it would.
Well, there are more than a few edge cases here. You could have a black market, and you could have people decide to recognize something else as currency, whether it's Bitcoin or whatever. It's all that matters for something to be money. Usually you want a government to issue it, because that means it's sort of real. People can't just make it on their own. It's the scarcity of it that matters, because if you could just pick up gold off the street and just go, Eureka, and then pick it up and then go buy something with it, the value of gold would drop pretty much to zero.
Exactly.
So as far as the money supply goes, usually currency, to be currency, it has to be something that a government issues and stands behind. That's what all that fine print on the money actually means. It used to mean
that's right,
that you could theoretically go to some place and get it to exchange it for a certain amount of gold or silver.
They used to call them silver certificates. I still have a few.
Well, they were pretty. I used to really enjoy coin collecting and collecting money and stuff like that. But
what I mean is, today with all these electronic transactions, couldn't the government theoretically just say, okay, well, you get to put like $15 million inside your bank account because I just put that into my computer to send to you?
No, it has to be redeemable for something. Saying you can claim a different number doesn't really accomplish anything. So when the Fed wants to introduce money into the money supply, what they frequently will do is they will do it through the banks. They can do something like just say, well, we're practically going to pay the banks to take money and lend it to people. And they just literally can print money, and then the banks say, give me money, I'm gonna lend this to somebody for way more than you're charging me for it. And they do that, and all this money just finds its way into the money supply by virtue of the banks. That's one way they can do it.
When a bank receives a dollar, whether it's the government or whether it's a person, when you deposit a dollar in the bank, the accounting that goes on in back is both recorded as an asset and a liability to the bank. So the bank does not gain anything by having depositors come in and bring money in except for one thing: possession of the money. And what can it do? Well, it can lend that money out and get a percentage return on the value of that money. And so if they have successful lending programs where the borrowers are capable of paying the rate of interest, and the rate of interest is correctly designed so it's manageable and still profitable for the bank, then the bank can do very well and make a lot of money because lots of people come in, deposit their money, and the bank doesn't have to keep all that money on hand. It only has to keep something on the order of 5 or 6% of it on hand, and just enough to do the liquidity transactions required, because you don't take the entire amount of your savings account. Most people don't every day or every month from your bank. So that stuff remains on deposit. It's available for employment by the bank as a loan. The bank collects interest, gets repayments of loans, and everybody's happy. The wealth creation events occur. That's one of the magic points of the economy. And so, in fact, just to relate it back to the $1 trillion bill story, that was related to why they wanted to print the $1 trillion bill. Was it was an effectively a way to ship a whole bunch more money to the Federal Reserve banks to enable them to recover faster. I think this was 2008, if I remember correctly, when that happened.
So the Treasury basically gets the money that the government spends. And so the Treasury can take in money from all sorts of things. Taxes would be one of them. And they also get in money from selling bonds, which is basically just saying, if you
lending
give me
money.
Yeah, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
I'll gladly pay you in 30 years for all of your money today.
Yeah, and what you're supposed to do is go, this is a good, safe investment. It's not particularly sexy because there's not a lot of interest, but you don't need a lot of interest because your risk is, in theory, very, very small.
Right.
So the Fed's printing money. They're pumping it into the economy through the banks. The Treasury is pulling in money through various means, including taxes and sales of bonds and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it's just this big mishmash where you're just trying to figure out where all the arrows are pointing. As far as the government just printing money and handing it out to people, that I honestly don't know about. I believe it sort of has to circulate through one of these systems. That
well, no. The time that I was talking about was when they were trying to give relief to the banks. That was the time they forced Wells Fargo to be part of the bailout. That was when they were distributing money directly.
Well, it's the Fed that's printing the money and distributing it through the banks into the economy. Right. And then it's the Treasury that takes the money in from things, like I said, bonds and taxes and that sort of stuff. And then they go off and spend all that stuff. So as long as they can basically borrow money for cheap, that's effectively how you get the money from the Fed to the Treasury.
Yeah.
Let's see if Chad is telling me I'm an idiot.
Oh, no, that you're, as far as I know, hey, Raining Monkey's here. Hey, buddy. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Hey, dude.
Hello.
Hey, Monkey.
So let's not lose sight of this. I want to actually bring up the counterpoint, which is, what do the top people in our government say is actually going on, and why us small people don't really understand. Who's afraid of big bad inflation? To judge by the stock market on Wednesday with the release of the latest consumer price index data, that would be the stock market. The S&P 500 slid 2.1% on the news that day. But Mr. Market, as the great Benjamin Graham dubbed the world of equities trading, is always changing his mind. He tends to calm down from a panicked spell once he has rationally assessed the situation. In this case, after the shock of the consumer price index news wore off, a sense of proportion returned. Come Thursday, things were looking a whole lot better with a 1.2% index bounce back. Yeah. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said that inflation may blip up a bit due to the economy's reopening, then settle down. As the Fed Governor Lael Brainerd remarked right after the new inflation report appeared, a limited period of pandemic-related price increases is likely to durably change inflation dynamics.
That is like having a bucket of hot tar dumped on you, and somebody come. Hey, the rain will take that off. Just stay out in the rain.
Yeah,
Fuck.
in the world of don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Exactly.
This is the mother of all golden showers.
Jesus Christ. That is just crazy.
I don't remember seeing it, but does this guy in this article once mention the $1 trillion being circulated into the economy through multiple massive spending packages?
Well, it's the money isn't from the spending; it's from the borrowing to do the spending. But yes, anybody with a short memory might actually believe this stuff because remember, the orange guy was making mean tweets, and we really can't have that because it's not very presidential. Whereas the people we have now really have a handle on the situation because modern monetary theory is super cool because Paul Krugman said so.
Don't get me started.
I had a Paul Krugman article that I was looking at, and I'm like, I will not do this to my friends.
Krugman, isn't that a drink?
To the show tonight because it's like no.
I love to see his articles because they really lend themselves to asking inconvenient questions. To which when he's confronted with this in an academic setting, and I've watched a number of lectures of his, he always eventually falls back to the same thing. You would not understand the answer. I have a Nobel.
I don't know how he has a Nobel Prize.
Because he was right place, right time, right ideologue. That's all that was.
I mean, what does having a Nobel Prize really mean anything at this point?
Not to me.
It used to. It used to be. There are some people, some pretty amazing people in the history of economics who have Nobel Prizes.
But Yasser Arafat was given the Peace Prize.
Well, let's not bring the Greta Thunberg Award for environmental activism into this. Who got it? Who got the Peace Prize this year? Did they finally decide?
I don't pay any attention to that.
Because I decided I didn't care.
I don't know.
Yeah, I decided I didn't care either. So
nobody wants a piece of that.
It's probably just Adolf Hitler.
All right. Well, let me just read one more little part of this.
The clone.
Let's give this the tiny amount of respect it's due, which is really tiny. What did we learn from the latest Consumer Price Index report? One thing was that the ever volatile food and energy were big drivers of the surge. So you mean to tell me that you shut down a major pipeline, you try to suppress the amount of domestic energy production, you drive energy prices through the roof, but it's just a blip?
Yeah, it's just normal variation.
Didn't do it. Not us.
The key thing. Look at the word ever volatile. When they say that ever volatile food and energy, any of these things that change in a volatile manner, they always say are ever volatile. If they're trying to sell you on the idea that this is pathological, this is out of the ordinary. Food and energy are always like this. And as usual, they were. How come they're only volatile to the upside? Let me tell you, the inflation is not going to get better immediately. It's not going to get better until here's the thing about what actually beat inflation was people beginning to believe that inflation was being beaten back. Once people have confidence that the government and the banks are acting in a way to reduce the amount of inflated dollars chasing goods, you step out of the inflation cycle. When you do that, good things begin to happen. You tend to have this period of austerity that's very tough on the economy, but that's part of cooling down the economy. There's a period that they went through, they called it stagflation, where people didn't have jobs. There was high unemployment and high inflation. And there was a lot of misery. They called it misery index right there. Anyway,
when you can explain things like the business cycle in a useful way, that's how you get things like a Nobel Prize in economics.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way it's supposed to. But it's like
I'm not positive Krugman understands the business.
No, I
cycle.
don't think he is. It's in terms of energy and energy and food are just sort of the leading indicators here.
Yeah.
First of all, there was huge policy stuff that influenced energy.
Yep.
As far as food goes, you've got people saying, "Well, you can't get people to come back to work. Pay them more money."
Yep.
Just pay them more money. Pay them double what you're paying them now. It'll be fine.
Yep.
And it certainly won't, equate to inflation.
There's another thing that's going on that we haven't talked about, and that is the Fed's loose money policy that they've had for a very long time now. They've kept interest rates not artificially low, but they certainly have encouraged the banks to keep them at a very low rate. The cost of capital now is as low as it's ever been in the history of the United States. And that's been a good thing. The problem is that you can only go to zero once. Okay. And then every time you have to back off from that, like you're trying to cool down the economy a little bit in an inflationary time, that's when it acts as a multiplier for austerity, because money gets tight when the economy's trying to get healthy. Holy crap, that's a bad thing. So we are potentially in a desperately serious situation as a result of the Fed being pressured to keep money loose, essentially to boost the stock market.
Well, we did sort of talk about the Fed and their loose policy, because that's how they basically put all of this trillions of dollars into the
yes, that's part of it. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, if you happen to be lucky enough to be a bank, you, with almost no risk, you can just make money.
Right.
You go to a thing where they give you money for almost no cost.
Right.
And then you give it to other people for a very high cost. And then those people pay you back with principal much more often than not.
Right.
And even if you go out of business, you don't really care, because you just get a job at another bank, because essentially it's a corporation and nothing's going to happen to you. There's no downside to just taking money for cheap and then loaning it to people.
No, that's
there's no personal accountability there.
That's how the savings and loan scandal happened. Basically, was when they realized there were no controls. The lending practices got really hairy, and no pun intended. What I mean is HAIRY.
Yes.
They got really out of control, and there were no controls on. When there are no controls on what you're doing in that type of environment, it can get really dishonest really fast. Let's just put it that way.
So, any final thoughts on this before I move on to the next thing? Anybody else?
The only thing I can really think of, and it's kind of tying more back into the previous couple of articles, but is basically that if they're going to ever think about overhauling the industry for basically energy efficient vehicles for green energy and stuff, like the way they keep saying they want to, that's going to be there's no way to do it with the way that the economy the economy would function now. It's impossible. So,
well, people were doing. I mean, if your goal is to reduce the amount of carbon we're spewing into the atmosphere, we were already doing it. We didn't need the government to tell us to do it, because a lot of people were simply making choices to just not produce so much carbon. They say, yeah, this sounds a little fishy. I'm kind of worried about it. I'm going to buy a more fuel efficient car, or I'm going to get a hybrid. Or I'm going to move closer to the office. People did a lot of things. The main thing we did was, when we started fracking, is we generated a lot of good, cheap natural gas. Natural gas is a blend of different hydrocarbons.
Yes.
But at its base, you look at something like methane. Methane is, CH4. Every time you take oxygen and you react it with methane, you have 4 hydrogen atoms basically forming a bond with oxygen to produce water, and that releases energy. And then you have the 1 carbon, which produces energy. If you make natural gas expensive, then people burn things like coal. When gas got really cheap, people said, I don't want to run a coal-powered plant. People keep bitching at me because everything smells funny for 100 miles downwind, and there's a whole list of reasons why you don't want to run a
particulate in the air and all
coal-powered
that
plant.
stuff.
Yeah, because nobody likes shoveling coal. I'm like just turning this valve.
Right.
More power.
Yeah.
And so essentially we shifted a lot of high carbon rich fuel sources to low carbon fuel sources. Natural gas is a low carbon fuel source. That's to a big extent why people building solar panels and then having these gas powered plants that essentially handle the burst. So if they need more power and the sun's going down or whatever, you fire up the natural gas plant. Easy.
Yeah.
And so carbon emissions were going down pretty much everywhere because of all the natural gas. So what's the first thing Biden does? Well, starts choking the supply of natural gas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
yeah. Nuking the pipeline was a real mistake. Just so you know, the oil and natural gas in the United States is 8% of our gross domestic product, and it's about 11 million jobs, just so you know. So if you cut into that dramatically, if you got rid of half of that, if you got rid of 4% of our GDP, you would feel it like in ways you can hardly believe. You would go into Walmart and half the shelves would be empty. I mean, you would have lines for gasoline. You'd have to make an appointment to buy gas. I really kid you not. It will be like that if these idiots and their silly environmental virtue signaling get any serious attention in the form of legislation that forces us to change our consumers' patterns. Sorry, Carrie, I didn't mean to
No,
go down
you're
the road
fine.
there.
What is AOC's degree in again? It's like some sort of...
It's the sociology of economics. What's economics and foreign relations, I believe, or international studies. That's what it is. And it's not a straight economics degree. She had like 2 basic economics courses that she had to take, and the rest of it was essentially the sociology of international relations.
It's that in the same sense that some environmental engineering programs are engineering programs.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm going.
Yeah,
to,
but I believe she got her degree from BU, which as a New Hampshire guy makes me laugh.
I'll have to take your word for it. Yeah, I don't want people like her doing that. In fact, if I was having a serious conversation about economics, there would at least be a graph and preferably the equations. We're just sort of chatting amongst ourselves at this point.
Right.
But when real serious people talk about economics, it's a much more rigorous conversation.
You need to at least be decent at integral calculus.
I don't think the people who have Biden's ear have a freaking clue what they're doing.
No, they don't. No. They really, truly don't, Harry. They don't have any of the quantitative analytical tools at hand to be able to firsthand verify the assumptions that they make upon which the policy recommendations come out of the White House.
Can I just say...
Sorry. Hold on a second, Jack. I spent about a year and a half helping some venture capitalists go over business plans. And so these business plans would come in, and mostly I was doing technical analysis, but I saw a lot of the other stuff. And the number of spreadsheets I've seen where people just sort of naively go, this is what's going to happen. It's like, look, it's on the spreadsheet. I just made up numbers and plugged them in, and here's a graph. We're all going to be rich. This has the same kind of aroma to it, to my mind, as that sort of stuff did. It's the same sort of thing where instead of specializing in mathematical economics, I think they may have specialized in PowerPoint. I think that might have been the big thing that they study in school. Sorry, Jack, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I feel as though, from what I've seen, it seems as though everything he does is so perfectly awful that it almost seems like he's intentionally trying to destroy the economy. And even though I don't think that Biden might be doing it intentionally, I think that perhaps there is someone who is trying to do it intentionally. Mm-hmm. I don't know who, and I'm not going to be one of those people who immediately jumps to saying George Soros, even though it is tempting. But it does feel like this is an awful lot of bad economics, all just merging into one giant, massive blob of awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much to be a coincidence.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm going to do a little rearranging. I'm going to skip making fun of Fauci because that's just easy and everybody.
That's low hanging fruit.
Yeah, we can.
It's like the lowest.
Let's see. Geodes, you back?
I'm here. Yeah, I've been.
Are you still hearing weird audio effects?
No,
it was my cat fountain. It was chugging. It was making
good
weird noises. I
not
fixed
not
it.
going to worry about it.
I just like I have to take off my cups to be able to hear anything in my room.
Volunteers here. Don't sweat it. So how many of you got a chance to look at the Glenn Greenwald thing that I posted?
Oh, it was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm developing like a weird single-sided relationship with Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah.
This past few years, the man has been just batting 1,000. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, he does a really good job. So, we cannot right now the Republicans are trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, and specifically how are they going to crush the Democrats in 2022. I think if they don't own gold themselves, they might just manage it. But in the meantime, as they try to figure out who's in charge of all this stuff, we've got Liz Cheney, who was one of the big muckety mucks for the Republicans in the House. And she is terrible. Glenn Greenwald does a really good job of breaking this down. Would somebody who's not me like to read a little from this article? And feel free to just pick on the high points.
I think I can read the article if you like.
Well, you have a copy of it, so rather than reading off the screen, why don't you just read from your own copy? If that's
sure. Let me pull it up real fast.
I've got it right here. It starts out in an interview on Tuesday with Fox News' Brett Baer. Representative Liz Cheney, our Wyoming, denied that she spread the discredited CIA Russian bounty story. That CIA tale claiming Russia was paying Taliban fighters to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan was cooked up by the CIA and then published by the New York Times on June 27th of last year, right as former President Trump announced his plans to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. The Times story, citing anonymous intelligence officials, was then continually invoked by pro-war Republicans and Democrats, led by Cheney, to justify their blocking of that troop withdrawal. The story was discredited when the U.S. intelligence community admitted last month that it had only low to moderate confidence that any of this even happened. When Baer asked Cheney about her role in spreading this debunked CIA story, Cheney blatantly lied to him, claiming, if you go back and look at what I said, every single thing I said, if those stories are true, we need to know why the president and vice president were not briefed on them. After Baer pressed her on the fact that she vested this story with credibility, Cheney insisted a second time that she never endorsed the claim, but merely spoke conditionally, always using the "if these reports are true" formulation. Watch Cheney deny her role in spreading the story, and then there is a video basically where, exactly what they say happens. And Liz Cheney, as she so often does, blatantly lied that she merely spoke of the Russian bounty story in the conditional. Every single thing I said, if those stories are true, is completely and demonstrably false. Indeed, other than Adam Schiff, there are few, if any, members of Congress who did more to spread this Russian bounty story as proven truth, all in order to block troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. In so doing, she borrowed from a pro-war playbook pioneered by her dad, to whom she owes her career. The former vice president would leak CIA claims to the New York Times to justify the war, then go on Meet the Press with Tim Russert, as he did on September 28, 2002, and cite those New York Times report as though they were independent confirmation of his views coming from that paper rather than from him. And I'll say this as an aside, that's something that the media does. They will do exactly the same thing. They'll run to each other and confirm each other's stories and say, we have this confirmed from, various sources. I won't read you the back and forth between Vice President Cheney and Russert, but basically what it's doing is supporting that assertion. Anyway, it goes on and says, so having CIA stories leaked to the press that fuel the pro-war cause, then having pro-war politicians cite those to justify their pro-war position is a Cheney family specialty. On July 1st, the House Armed Services Committee, of which Representative Cheney is a member, debated amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, the bill that authorized $740.5 billion in military spending. One of Cheney's top priorities was to align with the committee's pro-war Democrats, funded by weapons manufacturers, yes, they're owned, to block Trump's plan to withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan by the end of 2020 and to withdraw roughly 1/3 of the 34,000 U.S. troops in Germany. To justify her opposition, Cheney, contrary to what she repeatedly insisted to bear, cited the CIA's Russian bounty story without skepticism. In a joint statement with Representative Mac Thornberry, ranking members of the House Armed Services Committee, that Cheney published on her website on June 27th, the same day that the New York Times published its first story on the CIA tale, Cheney pronounced herself concerned about Russian activity in Afghanistan, including reports that they have targeted U.S. forces. There was nothing conditional about the statement. They were preparing to block troop withdrawal from Afghanistan and cited this story as proof that Russia does not wish us well in Afghanistan. That's basically the guts of the article.
Right. And people on the left, in the left-wing media, picked up on this and, tried to use it as a thing to sort of show how little control Trump had of the situation. There were people spinning like crazy with this particular story.
Absolutely.
Like he either didn't know or he didn't care, or, he says he cares about the troops, but he really doesn't. Well, he doesn't just send them out on neocon adventures, if that's what you mean by not caring about the troops.
Well, Liz Cheney is so enthralled to the arms manufacturers, and she is such their pet and believes, that all things are possible through war. And that really is...
She's a swamp beast.
She's a swamp beast. She absolutely is. Mm-hmm. And she's wholly owned subsidiary of Raytheon and Lockheed. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And so is Thornberry, by the way. We know what he is.
Yeah. So the Republicans decided to vote Liz Cheney out of her leadership position. Which, because Liz Cheney is staunchly anti-Trump. Now, I don't think that she should have to be pro-Trump. But I think all of the continuous lying and swamp beasting and the fact that she's essentially working against the will of the party kind of makes her unsuited for that position. So
how do you like who they voted in?
Well, I don't actually know much about Stefanik. I know that all the right people seem to hate her. Which is usually a good sign. Because there was a bunch of very conservative people, which I think are probably other swamp beasts, who think that Liz Cheney was just fine. And it's like, I'm sorry, if you think Liz Cheney was just fine, I kind of can't take your position, your evaluation too seriously.
Yeah, I will say, if the one family that we all know of as the I'm Not Sad family is on the left, and this is the family of please don't shoot me on the right while we're out hunting. So it's like,
yes, her father shot one of his friends in the face while pheasant hunting. Wasn't it pheasant?
Yeah,
It
was bird shot at distance. So most of the energy was out of the pellets. It just lodges in your skin. Anybody who's been hunting, anybody who is a bird hunter, either has done this to somebody or knows somebody it's been done to, and it's just part of it. Usually it gets lodged in your jacket, and this was not a, he wasn't desperately wounded. It wasn't like getting a full load of double up buck 10 feet away.
He didn't get ventilated during a home invasion.
No, exactly.
What was funny though was then there was like a whole public thing afterwards where the guy apologized to Dick Cheney.
Okay,
I know.
Keep in mind what we're talking about, and anybody other than Skep, remember the last name of the guy who got shot.
Not a clue.
Nope.
Partridge.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
that is
beautiful.
unfortunate.
And all the jokes were about, maybe he saw a partridge in a pear tree and all this stuff.
Yeah, good times.
Has anyone here ever seen the Amazon show Patriot?
I have.
No.
No.
You should watch it at some point. Season 1 is excellent.
Hold on, is it fiction or nonfiction? What are we doing?
It's fiction.
Okay.
It's about basically this really undercover kind of, not exactly a spy, but he's more like a bag man. and he's on nobody's books, and so for one in order to get one thing done, he has to effectively shoot his boss in the face, and his boss is played by the guy who played Red on that '70s show.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
So just
Oh, nice.
imagine that guy. He turns around, he sees the guy, and says, "You shot me in the fucking face!" It's the funniest fucking thing.
So is
It's
this
amazing.
an Amazon show?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, definitely give it a watch. Season 1 is absolutely excellent. Season 2, not quite as good, but season 1 is excellent.
Yeah. No,
Cool.
it's I'm always on the lookout for new stuff because I got rid of cable because I was tired of paying $130 to watch one show for half an hour once a week. That didn't seem like good value for me.
No.
Yeah, no,
But,
it's awful.
But anyway, so does anybody have any opinion about Stefanik other than the fact that all the right people hate her?
The only thing about it was she's identified strongly with Paul Ryan. She was she coached him like for the debate preparation and probably would have been his campaign manager. Just so you know what part of the Republican Party she comes from.
Yeah, well, she's
That's-
not Romney's niece. That's a start.
Yeah, exactly.
I personally will say I've interacted with a lot of people who are a lot more pro-war stance over my lifetime in my family. And I understand the arguments to a certain extent, but then something like this happens and it's like, no, just no.
Hey, so there's a big difference between being pro-American defense and being a neocon.
Yeah.
Neocons are something far worse because you can certainly be hawkish about, go full Teddy Roosevelt. That's fine. I can totally respect the Rough Rider mentality when it comes to foreign relations. But neocons are a different sort of thing. They're the kind of people that want to sort of take the realpolitik and military policy and kind of mix them up, thinking, oh well, we're just going to go in like a surgeon, like an expert, and we're going to destabilize things and then put it all back together, and then the flower of democracy will just blossom.
Because building nations is easy.
Building nations is easy. You don't even have to occupy the countries. You literally destroy all of the infrastructure, and then you come rolling in, and they welcome you like they'll
They'll be strewing flowers in your path.
Yes, it's going to be fantastic. And then democracy will just blossom because everybody knows what happens to a power vacuum.
Be
and
like
vacuum in the
Patton
Middle
being
East.
welcomed into Sicily.
Speaking of which, we've been talking about the Middle East. Of course, everybody's been talking about the Middle East. And things are starting to get a little more real there. I'm using USA Today because it's one of the few newspapers that isn't sort of far right or far left. They seem to be one of the few that are actually kind
It's
of
actually
balanced.
as close to the mainstream media as I get is USA Today, and I do use them for some stuff.
Yeah. An Israeli airstrike on Saturday targeted and destroyed a high-rise building in Gaza City that housed offices of the Associated Press, used to be Objective, now they're not, so don't care, and other media outlets. Hours later, Israel bombed the home of a top leader of Gaza's ruling militant Hamas group. Those are the people launching rockets at Israeli civilians, just for the record. The Israeli military said the home of Khalil al-Hayya served as part of what it said was the militant group's terrorist infrastructure. This dude is a senior figure in the Hamas political leadership in Gaza, and the attack marked a further escalation, signaling that Israel is going after Hamas's top leadership and not just military commanders. His fate after the strike was not immediately known.
Before we get far into this, may I say a few words here?
Sure.
I would like to just command the floor for a bit of a monologue.
Well, take a few minutes.
Huh?
Take a few minutes. Go ahead.
It'll just take a minute. Really will. The Palestinians will never accept the existence of Israel. And they systematically teach their children that they must never do so. themselves. That's why Israelis and Israeli politicians and the leaders there throw up their hands. Israelis have grown accustomed to being pilloried in the most crude and violent terms in Palestinian mosques. They have grown accustomed to media controlled by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, that these guys regularly undermine the readiness to accept Israel alongside a future Palestinian state, a two-state solution. They glorify suicide bombers. They quote Muhammad as saying that Jews must be killed, accuse Israelis of poisoning and spreading AIDS among Palestinians. These are lies made up of whole cloth. Deny that the Holocaust happened, claim that Jews never had a history in the land, and that there never was any temple in Jerusalem, despite the fact that their fucking mosque is built on top of the temple, and insist that Jews should leave the area and go back to their original homelands, which strangely they say are Europe and Ethiopia, inexplicably. So Israelis might feel reassured that peace is possible if the Palestinian Authority's education system were to promote the idea that peace is possible. Even if the current Palestinian generation isn't ready to accept the Jewish state, maybe a future one would if they were being inculcated with these principles now. But they know that Palestinian students study maps in their textbooks on which Israel does not even exist, and they watch television programs aimed at young people that identify cities in Israel as being part of Palestine. Moreover, the other Palestinian territory, Gaza, is governed by Hamas. That's a group that's forthright in declaring that it will fight until Israel is gone. It's in their charter. I can get you the exact wording. And that promotes this ideology in every way it can in its own media and an education system. Even if the Palestinian Authority, even if the PA, Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas, all that lot over in the West Bank were to foster the ideal of coexistence among its students, what about the people in Gaza? What about the students in Gaza? Palestinians will always demand more concessions from Israel until there is no Israel. Israel has made concession after concession. They give them unbelievably good terms for peace year after year after year. It's like life is saying to the Palestinians, here, win the game. Win the game. Here it is. Here's the ball. Run it over the end zone. And the Palestinians set the ball on fire and throw it back in God's face. And you know what? They've run out of chances. And Israel has finally said, okay, fuck you. We're going to protect ourselves. And I don't blame them a bit. Thank you for letting.
Well, basically, they took the building that the AP was in and they just bombed the crap out of it. They sent warning. They said, get out of this building. They actually contacted the owner of the building, and
they sure did.
And they all got.
I saw them talking to him on the cell phone. That was actually in on JPost, Israeli media outlet, that they had him talking to the guy on the phone. They said, we're going to hit you with a knock bomb, which is your final warning. That's an explosion over the thing before we bomb it, so that it's a last ditch thing to get everybody out of the building. That's the level of consideration that Israel is going to.
Yeah, that's typically what you do when you're trying to genocide people.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. You want to protect their
you
lives.
You want to warn the citizens.
Their wives and children.
No, they just are trying to knock out Hamas and
that's
other
exactly
terrorist infrastructure. Yeah. And the fact that they love to co-locate things with nurseries and kindergartens and hospitals and other stuff is. I mean, what are the Israelis supposed to do? Just sit there and take it?
Yeah,
I mean, seriously,
the world says yes. The world says you should take it, and here's what like Code Pink wants. Since you asked the question, I'll answer it for you. Here's what they want. They want Israel to say, you know what? We're going to throw down our borders, and we're going to give all our stuff to you. We're going to give you our treasury. We're going to give you our companies and everything else, and then we will repatriate ourselves back to Europe and Ethiopia for some reason, even though we don't come from there. We'll move there, to make it convenient for you and leave all the infrastructure behind, and it will all be yours. This is the dream of Hamas and Mahmoud Abbas and the PA and the PLO and the PLA and Fatah and all those fucking bastards.
Well, I guess they haven't seen that last few scenes of Lawrence of Arabia.
Nice.
Where they
Good
basically
call.
drive the Turks out.
Right.
And T.E. Lawrence is basically sitting there, and they're like, okay, they've got a bunch of desert nomads going, okay, now we're in charge. How are we going to run things?
Exactly. What do we do now?
Yeah, the power went out, the water stopped. It all just didn't go. You can't just take people who are really good at something, tell them to go away, and then expect other people to come in. It didn't work in Africa either.
It didn't
Get
work
rid
in
of all those
Venezuela.
white farmers. Let's kick all them out.
Yeah,
And
no.
just let people who don't know how to farm come back.
Zimbabwe.
Take over
That's
things,
exactly
and
what
then
happened.
it's fine. It's fine. Anybody can farm. It's
Zimbabwe
easy.
used to be a net exporter of food. Now they can't even feed themselves.
Can't they just raise Belgian endive? Wasn't that what Dukakis was suggesting? I forget.
Yeah. Dukakis. He was the maniac.
So they not only took out that building, they decided to basically treat the terrorists like they were fire ants, and they bombed the ever-living crap out of their tunnel complexes.
But how did they do it? They did a very, very cool thing, really, in my opinion. They said, we're going to come in on the ground, and we're going to attack you, and we're going to come in here, 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 and here, and they leaked their plan through their intelligence service. And they also publicly stated that they were going to be doing ground offensives. So these guys, we've got the inside skinny. We'll wait for them in these tunnels. Well, what Israel really wanted to do was just get rid of the tunnels and the people who dug them. Well, the people who dug them were in the tunnels, and Israel bombed the tunnels. And tunnels are gonna tunnel when you bomb them, if you know what I mean.
That's why.
Tunnel's gonna tunnel.
Well, like I said, the analogy to fire ants is pretty apt.
It's pretty apt. Yeah, it's right on the money. So.
I'm imagining that scene in Caddyshack with Bill Murray bombing the little gopher holes.
You know, here on the Saturday Night Show, we don't talk about rodent genocide casually.
It's a very serious subject.
I know you're not always here, but this is a
We stand with Nigel.
I'm familiar. I am familiar with some of the back and forth controversy.
With all of the Nigel backstory. Okay.
We stand with the Nigelian prince. Yeah.
So, just some quick information of recent history with the region and how America relates. Trump cut funding to the UN agency that's in charge of giving money to basically Hamas, because they're in charge. It was about $235 million.
That's right.
Trump stopped that.
Yep.
Guess what happened at the beginning of last month? Biden
restarted
it. They got $235 million. They fired, 10,000 rockets?
Yeah.
The rockets cost about $24,000 a piece.
Yeah. Well,
do you know how much
10,000?
I'm just
some of them not so much. Some of the more expensive ones that have the long range that can get to Tel Aviv, yes, those cost money.
A equivalent rocket on like a black market. Regardless, almost all of that money equals to about 10,000 rockets. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here or anything. I'm just saying, like, looking at these numbers and the recent buildup, it boggles my mind that we're talking about, he was on his cell phone, and what, that's supposed to make me sympathize for you? No, they gave you the warning to get the out. And I don't care. At this point, I don't care. I laughed my ass off when I saw that video today. And it's not because I don't have sympathy for people who are dying in war zones. It's just, it's tragic, but there's a bigger picture here that a lot of these news outlets just don't give a shit about. They won't cover. They won't talk about in any sort of earnest discussion. There's plenty of stuff to say about both sides, but nobody in the corporate media is having these discussions. It's either one side or the other.
Well, we're having this discussion.
Oh yeah.
So since you handed me a segue, okay. So to anybody who's relatively young, who's not in 50 plus, who hasn't gone through decades of hearing about the Israelis trying to make peace, and then there's a process, and then there's peace, and then there's war, and then there's conflict, and then there's terrorism, and this has just been going on and on and on and on, and that's sort of what Skep was alluding to. I asked Sora if she wouldn't mind going over the history of this small, young country of Israel since it was created by the United Nations, just to kind of give people a little context. Because if you're fresh to this, you might think, look at the big, bad Israelis. They've got all the money and the technology, and, the U.S. is backing them, and it's not really fair. Those plucky little Palestinians get pretty much nothing. It's basically apartheid. It's basically South Africa all over again. And I can see where somebody who doesn't know the history might think that. So that's why I asked Sora if she would put together a bit of a timeline for us, or some sort of explanation of how we got to the place where we are now. So I'm going to hand it over.
And apologies for being a little too ranty, but you'll probably get why when Sora goes over this information, because I'm involved with that.
So I'm handing it over to Sora. Why don't you take the lead?
Okie doke. So, we were going to discuss it from the UN declaration, but I will actually bring it back shortly to just around the First World War at the Balfour, about the Balfour Declaration. So this is basically when the British government, wanting a support from the Jewish people, saying that, hey, we're going to support you to establish a national home, bring back statehood, basically, to the Jewish people. So the reason that's important is so you know that in what you could consider modern times, we're looking at First World War. And then fast forward, a lot of things happened, and we are in 1947. So, which is really the start of the back and forth sniping at each other, because on November 29th, 1947, we get a Jewish state is agreed upon by the UN. So we're looking at the time, in favor 33, against 13, and 10 abstain, and I believe one was absent from the vote of the nations who voted for the resolution to create Israeli state. So you'd think, okay, well, fantastic, that's great. What happens next? Immediately the Arabs attack. So you've got from day one, basically, there was this isn't going to work out. And that the area that they were granted was a lot smaller than what it would have been written out in the Balfour, during the Balfour Declaration, pardon me, keep forgetting that word. But still, it is nation state in the historical land of Israel. So you've got all of this there. Fantastic. We have a home. We can start building in it. And basically, has been nonstop conflict since then. Well, more or less nonstop conflict. And in some piecemeal fights that we're looking at, you've got all sorts of. We got 1948. There was a big sort of kicking out of some Palestinian refugees. There was a bunch of killing in wars coming from around that time. Hold on, sorry, I will bring the actual name.
Are you starting with the Arab-Israeli War in 1948?
There we go. Thank you very much.
And that started as 6 months of civil war between Jewish and Arab militias when the Mandate period in Palestine was ending. And it turned into wide-ranging regular war after Israel was fully established. And what happened basically was a bunch of Arab armies came in and intervened in this militia war that was already going on. And in the conclusion, after Israel beat the shit out of everybody else, a set of agreements were signed between, I think, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria.
'Cause you've
And
got
that was
Egypt.
the 1949 armistice.
Yeah, so you've got Egypt taking a chunk of what's now the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
Then you've got the West Bank being taken over by Jordan. Israel did eat a chunk of what was left to be the Palestinians' areas, and that resulted in 700,000, give or take, Palestinian refugees during that fight.
But none of that would have happened if they hadn't started acting up in the war.
Exactly.
I mean, and during that time, it was very interesting because of the quick that I read here and there. Neither Jordan nor Egypt, per se, established a Palestinian state in the lands that they claimed. So they sort of just absorbed, okay, this is ours, but they didn't necessarily put that stamp, that nationhood name on it. So that's interesting.
Well, little known fact, for most of my life, I think it's fair to say that nobody really wants the Palestinians.
No,
It's not
nobody
like all
does.
these other countries in the regions were like, oh, just send them in here. That's, the more the merrier.
The Arabs hate the Palestinians. They don't have any allies. You look at the United Arab Emirates, you look at Kuwait, you look at Saudi. They won't have anything to do with them. But go ahead, Sora. You need to get to the Fedayeen insurgency and the Suez crisis and the 6-Day War and all that stuff.
Yeah, we got a ways to go.
So we've got jumping forward about a decade. You got to the Suez crisis, which we went sort of a little bit over thanks to the blockage a little while ago. So you got that happening, and then again, I'm kind of jumping like 10, like some of the fun ones. It seems to happen really every 10 years or so, more or less.
Just the thing with the Suez crisis, the thing to take from that is that was when Egypt decided they were going to nationalize the Suez Canal and only let the people they wanted to let use it, and they were going to back that up with military force. Well,
and Israel decided to say no.
Britain, France, and Israel got together and said, we think that's a terrible idea, because Britain and France just have a tremendous amount of commercial tonnage through the Suez Canal. And Israel said, we'll help, and we'll be glad to help, because we like having the Suez there too. Yeah, Africa's big, and it's always been big, and it's still big. So yeah, we want access to that, and so that was that was when Israel invaded the Sinai, and the U.S. basically convinced Israel to basically said, hey, holding on to Sinai is a non-starter. You can't do that. Give that back to Egypt. It's a freebie. It's a bunch of wasteland. You don't want it anyway. There's no oil there. Get out of there. And so they did, and so they left that, and that actually ended up going a long way toward making a peace deal between Egypt and Israel possible later on. But go ahead. You need to get to the 6-Day War now.
So we get to the before the 6-Day War happened. So a couple of years before, the PLO is formed. So that's the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So we have the PLO started, which is different from Hamas.
Oh, very different. Hate each other.
They hate each other. One is one source stylized it, and I like this. PLO is a real estate issue. Hamas is a religious issue. So that was an interesting way of putting it.
PLO is secular, and Hamas is religious based. That's the reason they say stuff like they both are real interested in the real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I spent too many years of my life watching Yasser Arafat.
That's a name.
That bastard. That rat bastard.
That's a name
Sora.
I haven't heard.
Yeah, that's
I know. So we got PLO in 1964. Then we get to June 5th, 1967, and that's the 6-Day War. So that displaced like a couple 100,000 Palestinians, and you are looking at Israelis a warplane strike against the Egyptian airfields. They entered the Sinai Peninsula again. And they weren't going to give it back either. No. they took control of everything that was taken from them back in the 40s. So you're looking at Gaza Strip, Sinai, West Bank, Golan Heights,
West Bank.
part of Arab Jerusalem, and they're like, "Okay, come at me, bro." So that was
So weren't they
67.
massively outnumbered in the 6-Day War, though? I mean, it was like a dog pile.
Something
Everybody
like
went
7-1, if you want to know the numbers, Harry.
Yeah, and as I recall, they were militarily they were just brilliant.
Oh yeah,
one of the
they
things
absolutely
did is
were.
They started putting together basically primitive drones to get intelligence on the enemy in that one, as I recall. They were doing a lot of really clever things.
That's how they found out that Egypt's Air Force was still on the ground. Egypt never got a plane in the air.
Yeah,
Their
knowing
planes
where
were
all of-
destroyed on the ground.
Yeah, knowing where your enemy's shit is when they don't know where your stuff is a huge advantage.
It's
The fog of war is a very real thing.
It's
and
a
it wasn't
thing, yeah.
nearly as foggy on the Israeli side as it was everybody else's,
So
which is
what
why
it-
they prevailed against the
Yeah.
dog pile that tried to wipe them out.
because everybody was depending on Egypt's Air Force to provide, if not air superiority, at least a fighting chance against Israel's Air Force, because they certainly had them outnumbered.
Yeah.
Except that after one morning, Egypt didn't have an Air Force.
Yeah,
They
where's
didn't.
the cow?
They had, and they almost didn't lose a pilot. The pilots were all there in the officers' club going, "Our planes are gone."
What's that popping noise?
Yeah.
Somebody
Okay,
make
let's all
popcorn.
stop interrupting Sora, and I'm one of the worst.
And
Go on, Sora.
I am too. I will be quiet now.
That's okay, because I have so very basic information.
Well, let's say, Sora, if you want anybody to expand on anything, feel free to call on anybody here.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, we're in the 6-Day War, and we've got everything like that. And eventually they resolved it. The UN Security Council resolved it a little bit by saying, okay, let's do a land for peace. Let's try to calm down. And then the war of attrition happened. So that didn't really help much. So you've got Egypt versus Israel trying to grind each other down until there isn't much there. And then our friend Yasser Arafat in 1969, he's coming in, starts being head of the PLO. So we've got that in the end of the 1960s. So the next big thing, I mean, there's basically in that decade, sort of between the end of the 1960s into beginning of the 1970s, you've got it's nonstop. So you've got back and forth. There is really no stopping. There's Israeli school buses being attacked, children massacred. You've got mosques being set on fire in Jerusalem. You've got Christians being killed by, I don't know if it's by accident because they happen to be where the Jews are or what, but it just so happens. You've got all sorts of attacks here and there happening. So it's not like they stop on one year and nothing happens until the next event. This is sort of an ongoing thing that's happening. And then you have in 1973, a coalition of Arab nations attacking Israel. So this is at October 1973. Arab forces, which was led by Egypt and Syria, attacked Israel. But were eventually struck back thanks to the allies, Israel and their allies, including the US. And a few years later, we've got some peace happening. This is during President Carter's presidency. So you've got a peace deal sort of happening between Egypt and Israel. And this is the Camp David Accords. So we're looking at that. So we're now at the end of the 70s. Things more or less stagnant-ish until the 80s, end of the 80s, where we have the Palestinian uprising, and this is the Intifada happening in the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel. This is fantastic. Let's just add that into there. It's amazing. That area is still attached to the planet. The amount of like war that's happened in that area that hasn't stopped is just amazing.
Yeah, it's a crucible of grief, basically.
Yeah. And the start of what's interesting is the start of this. The first Intifada was in the heart of Arab Jerusalem, which is interesting. So it started there versus in Israel itself. Okay, so then we're in the 90s, and the Madrid conference in 91. Another attempt at negotiations with Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and the Palestinians, which is interesting that they're separate. I think that goes back to your comment of nobody wants them.
Yep.
Thanks, Functional. And okay, so where were we here? Sorry about that. All right, so 91, you have the Madrid conference as mentioned, and then we head into 93, and we have the Oslo Peace Accords. And for the next couple of years, you're basically signing a lot of agreements between Israel and the PLO. So nobody else is really in here yet. And then we have an assassination in 95. The Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, is assassinated, which is interesting. I don't remember any of that being taught about this or anything like this. So that's pretty significant piece of history when your president's assassinated.
Yep.
Prime Minister, pardon me. Okay, so don't worry, Israel plays tit for tat, and they assassinate the leader in 2001 of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So that's because why not? I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead. I've missed the second Intifada. So the second Palestinian uprising begins. And this is due to Ariel Sharon, the future Prime Minister of Israel, visiting Jerusalem, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem like a really good reason for an uprising, but I guess you had to be there.
Yeah. I guess so. I wonder if he pulled a thing like when Charles de Gaulle came. Was it Charles de Gaulle? Came and just basically stirred the pot in Quebec with the Vive the Quebec Libre. It kind of feels like that, and it kind of stirred the pot in the country. But anyway, so that's 2000, and we've got our second war here, or our second uprising, pardon me, and then that leads to the assassination of the leader in 2001, and then 2002, Hamas enters the picture with a Passover suicide attack, killing 30 civilians during Passover. And then we have another occupation of the West Bank by the Israelis. And now we're fighting Hamas in Gaza, because now that's who PLO is kind of faded into the background. And in a few years ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he decided to say, screw you, we are not getting a two-state. Hold on. Let's see. I think I've missed about a decade's worth of fun stuff.
Yeah, but
And
I
you
think the point we're trying to get across here is
It has not. This is not surprising in terms of, oh my God, what's happening? It's more of that they literally haven't had a day of rest since 48.
Yeah.
Or 47, I guess, when the
and a lot of the
vote
time
came in.
It's not the Israelis that are the aggressors here. They've been attacked, and people have tried to wipe them out in droves. And the Israelis keep not getting destroyed. And any kind of compromise they make with the Palestinians is not going to satisfy their requirements because, as it's been pointed out, they're a religious organization. They think it's a holy war to basically drive the Jews out of their holy land. There's no compromise when you think something's your holy land.
I wanted to mention before you go on that Ariel Sharon fought in like all of those conflicts you just mentioned, and he rose through the ranks. He was one of their greatest military commanders, adding to sort of why they would. There were other political things going on, but his visit to Jerusalem was like just like an impetus on top of it. Like he was the match that lit the big pile of refuse that was already building up with the tensions and everything.
Okay, go ahead, Sora.
It might be good for people to know that Hamas they joined the fight in 2006 when they won election in Gaza. So that's really when they got. That's a big screw up basically for that area, because when you have essentially a terrorist group winning an election
Constantly, every time there's an election, their big terrorist groups always win the elections. That's why it's hard to have sympathy for a lot of the people, because they're supporting this.
Yeah, this isn't like Iran, where you get the sense that many of the people in Iran want nothing to do with a fight with the U.S.
Yeah.
But these people have been radicalized so effectively for such a long time. Like I said, go to memorytv.org. It's MEMRITV.org. And you can see what kind of TV shows they show in Palestine. And look at the kids' shows. The kids' shows are all about basically training young minds to go to war later. You've got little kids with suicide vests acting out school plays in elementary school. It's sick.
If you see another Jewish child with the hat and the payas, throw a rock.
It's people talk about racism and all these things here in this country. No, this is what actual racism looks like. This is what actual religious intolerance looks like.
Because and the people are getting shocked that they retaliate. Well, this is what they deal with. So you've got you wait. Your rockets hit you, and then they retaliate by bombing what would be kind of retaliating by what would be military compounds. It just happens that they do their military compounds where the civilians are, because who cares? And people are shocked. Oh, the poor Palestinian man who's just walking. I was like, well
yeah.
And then you've got in 2014. Hamas militants kill 3 Israeli teenagers that they kidnapped from a Jewish settlement. And then there's the Israeli military response, and everyone's like, oh my God, they ended up killing so many Palestinians in that area.
Well, the Israelis have been incredibly resourceful during all of this time, because when you don't have full-scale conflict going on, there was still sort of things at a low boil. I don't know if it's Likud, but essentially the Israelis, when they would decide they wanted to get rid of a Palestinian who was behind terrorism, they would do things like sabotage the cell phone so that it would blow up. It's like, oops.
Because the Mossad
the old exploding Mossad. Yeah, the old exploding phone trick. That's a good one.
The Mossad have a fairly large contingent of Arab or Arab passing Israelis who operate in such activities regularly and information gathering. That's why they're able to have these surgical strikes and know, as soon as the rockets are fired, they know exactly where they came from. They know the movements of these militant groups constantly.
It's actually not that hard to figure out where the rockets were coming from, but yeah.
No, I mean, sorry, I misspoke. Before the rockets are moved, it's going to come from here because that's where the last convoy went or whatever. They know these things ahead of time. It's just they're not there to be aggressors, like you said. They're defending themselves from constantly being bombarded, and when they retaliate, like Sora said, that's when the news cameras are on.
It's not to say that loss of life all around when it's civilians isn't tragic, because it is. But the thing is that when you're dealing with a group when you're dealing with one group who wants to have a nation state and they've managed to, they're trying to set up, they have cities and homes and they have their children, everything that the Israel has tried to set up over the last few decades. And then you have the other people who all they are doing is teaching their children to burn holy texts and then blowing things up in the attempt to take over, and it's not working. Well, it's at one point you're like, well, I'm sorry, the other people are trying to protect their citizens. You are using yours as meat shields.
Yeah, if they had put some of the energy into building up their communities instead of engaging in decades of war that they're just going to keep losing, just think about how much further along they would be.
Yeah. And sort of the last big thing that stirred the pot coming up to this last couple of years was, of course, President Trump declaring sort of moving Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving from Tel Aviv to there.
But so they did a lot to not stir the pot, to unstir it. I mean, he had people doing real peace deals. Because once people in the Arab world realized that the United States was going to be friends with Israel and that wasn't really negotiable, it was just kind of in their best interest to just go, yeah, I don't really feel like fighting with the U.S. and let's just sign the deal. I think he was a legitimate contender for the Nobel Peace Prize. But it's all been undone now because we have the top people in taking care of foreign policy.
Like Hunter?
Yeah.
I hear he's really good at that.
But anyway, that's how we got where we are. Thank you, Sora.
Sorry for the jumping all over the place.
No,
if nobody notices,
no, it's good.
I totally did my homework right before class.
No, it's the thing is it's authentic. Now you didn't know most of this stuff going into it, I'm guessing. Not
really, no. Very little. Nothing. We did learn some of this, I remember vaguely, in history, but just not in high school, but not really in much depth.
Now you hang out with a lot of salty people like like me and Skep and Functional, so I suspect you probably weren't too sympathetic to the Palestinian situation going into this. Do you feel any different now knowing what you know?
I am sympathetic to them in that they are people who live without access to global education. And they are unfortunately stuck in a place that they probably will not ever get out of alive. And that's sad because they're just going to be surrounded by fighting and war. And these are the same people in the same area. And then you look at the nation state of Israel where you have people like, they've got world-known universities and people all over the world and education and everybody's and you've got all that sort of stuff, and it's such a stark contrast, and it's very sad for that. Now, for the actual people who are adults and have access to have more access to internet and other means and everything, they continue to do this are in fact just this is what they live for. No, I have no sympathy for that. You can't. At least I don't think you can, because it's just it's difficult. Because now that I'm thinking about it, you're like, yeah, but do they really have a choice in terms of their own lives? Like, you fight or you don't, and then who knows what the Hamas will do to you.
Well, if you were born there, imagine if you were born there. Place yourself in their position. You would basically be born in a place where you're just kind of screwed because you're going to be gaslighted or gaslit. I don't know, gaslit from the moment you're born. From every direction, you're going to be hit with propaganda and radicalization to the point where how do you expect this region to get any better as long as the people vote for these people to be in charge? They teach the kids what they're teaching them. They grow up to become new voters who continue to vote, et cetera, et cetera. The cycle, I don't see anything breaking this cycle. No. I just don't see where it's in it for the Israelis to give them a damn thing. And if they're going to launch rockets at them, the Israelis have every right, both legally and morally, to defend themselves.
Well, what are they going to do? Allow them to kill their own people? No.
Right. And it's distorted by the Iron Dome. Because if they didn't have an Iron Dome, we would be looking at massive amounts of death on the Israeli side.
Mm-hmm.
If we had an air defense system like this, and there were rebels in Mexico who were getting funding and technical expertise from Cuba, and they were launching rockets into southern Texas, southern New Mexico, southern Arizona, and hell, San Diego, do you think for a second we wouldn't, as the United States, be going after Cuba in retribution? We're all overlooking the fact that countries like Iran are putting a lot of the technical know-how and money into this. So in some ways, this is almost the Iranian Revolution continuing to just sort of reverberate. And this is where Skep should tell me if I'm full of it. Oh, he's muted. Okay.
I'm sorry. What did you just say?
Well, I was just saying that we had the Iranian Revolution, and that's when the religious people basically took over, and they've been trying to export their views. I'm sure they're helping.
And isn't that the sad? Like if you see pictures from the 70s,
Yeah. Where basically women are
culture.
wearing modest skirts and smiling, and you can see their faces, and people. It was.
and
If you get me started talking about this, we're gonna have a 4-hour show.
Yeah. Well, we can have a 4-hour
I
show
get
after.
sad just looking
Probably-
at the photos
probably
before and after. I'm just gonna put it
Yeah.
out there. If you want to be depressed and there's no dead people in some of those pictures, it's nothing like that. It's just the state of female education from one day to the next.
Yeah. The point being that the people in Palestine need to shake this crap off. There needs to be maybe the people who are living with the Jews in Israel and getting along can find some way to let their brothers on the other side of the fence know, hey, these guys aren't so bad. I don't know. I'm just trying to think, is there some way somebody can solve this thing? Or the other option is basically just to let the Palestinians know the complete futility of what they're trying to do. And I think that's the lesson the Jews are trying to give them right now. Or the Israelis, excuse me. I
Which
keep
begs the
forgetting that
question.
there are non-Jews in the Israeli army. I'm sorry, I'm making a dumb mistake.
25% of the Israeli citizenry is not Jewish.
Right. Sorry to forget about
Almost all
25% of you.
Almost all of them are Arab, but a few,
Yep.
about 3%, I think, Christian, and the other 21% are Arab.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Sora, I interrupted you. You were
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
ask a
sorry.
question.
I didn't mean to speak up, but
Oh, no,
that's okay.
you would
You're
want to
fine.
know.
It just for me, it just begs the question. Okay, the Israelis have been trying to teach them this lesson year after year after year. What exactly is how good is their propaganda suppression? And so that there is all of this futile attempts. That's
Well,
that's very
Your
interesting.
average person does not have access to the outside world. And Israel is trying their damnedest to prevent a last solution of full-on occupation, full-on military on every street corner, and just quashing it and trying to give them education, and just it would be a shit show, because you would literally have people running out into the streets, attacking soldiers shooting them dead in the streets, and they don't want that. Nobody wants that.
Well, shall we pivot to a few fun things before we say goodnight?
Sure.
I like fun things.
Because we are not going to solve the Arab-Israeli problem.
No.
Okay, so a number of things. Some of you may have heard of this. SpaceX accepts Dogecoin as payment to launch Doge 1 mission to the moon next year.
God,
Did you guys
I
hear
fucking
about
hate
this?
people.
Nobody heard about this. Okay.
I heard about it.
Okay, so I think this is.
I heard
quite
about
funny.
I
mean,
did.
Elon just can't help himself at this point. He is enjoying being Elon Musk far too much, and so the fact that a joke currency has become valuable to the point where you can actually buy SpaceX services to launch a mission to the freaking moon using Dogecoin is amazing. Is this the best possible timeline?
I think that Elon is helping to make it the best possible timeline.
I just love this. Geometric Energy Corporation announced the Dogecoin-funded mission on Sunday, with Doge 1 representing a 40-kilogram cube satellite flying as payload on a Falcon 9 rocket. Yeah, so basically the Falcon 9 can carry a bunch of stuff. It doesn't have to carry only one thing. So, but in this particular case, they're going to send a satellite to the moon. I think this is fantastic. I'm not really sure what there is to say about this other than
This is peak internet meme culture, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm totally here. This is the best thing to happen since GameStop.
Yeah. The thing is that what's going to happen is people are going to be like, as soon as Dogecoin gets to the moon, it's going to skyrocket in value. No, the same thing happened the last 3 times Dogecoin prices went way up. It was, everybody was anticipating something, and then the day comes and everybody sells off. And the thing is that what you look for in that case is the difference pre and post announcement in the aggregate. And in the aggregate, Dogecoin comes out worth more in value. It's just that the timing is wrong.
Yeah, a lot of the cryptocurrency stuff is basically a game of chicken. Does everybody know what a game of chicken is?
Yes.
It's okay. It's I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically you have 2 cars going straight at each other at high speed, and essentially waiting for somebody to chicken out and sort of drive to the side. And that means you're the loser. Frankly, anytime somebody does that, I think you're both winners, but that's just me. Yeah, you just basically ride this thing until it collapses, and the goal is to basically get out at the high point. But nobody knows what the high point is. And this is essentially gambling. It's not investing. But
yeah,
whatever. It's not my business. People can do what they want.
The thing is, if you're gonna do this sort of thing, don't bother trying to predict where the high place and the low place is. What you do is you just invest in it and hold it. Hold it for a long time, and then what you see is that between all those peaks and valleys, the overall price of Dogecoin is going up. And that's where you see your returns, is over time. You gotta wait for these things. There's
Minions
no
of
fast
the Zoo
payday.
does not endorse Jack Gunski's Dogecoin market timing techniques.
Hey, in fairness, I bought in when it was 3 cents. It's now over 50, so
Yeah,
I'm
good
pretty
job.
happy.
No, good job, man. I don't begrudge other people's success.
I do have a question though.
Sure.
Does this mean that Elon Musk is trying to become the Doge of Dogecoin?
He's Chief Doge in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, don't click on the
This
same
is just
article
a
twice,
really,
Harry.
really
That doesn't help.
expensive marketing campaign.
It is. So the Chinese have decided to innovate by doing something nobody else has ever done again, something truly unique, and they've sent a spacecraft to Mars. It's a rover. It's very, very exciting. They're pathfinding whole new areas of space exploration. Oh wait, no, they're just copying us. I don't think this is a very attractive rover. I'm just saying.
It looks like it's made out of connects.
It does. This looks like somebody's science fair
This
project.
is like
This looks like those old Lego projects where you have to program the robot, and it was the whole assembly kit of like you put this if block here and then the then block there, and they attach together with that line there.
Stop giving away China's state secrets.
It doesn't even have its own aerial drone that can scout out ahead of time. It doesn't. This is not okay. Good job, China. I think. All kidding aside, what I think is interesting is the difference between the way China handled their landing and the way we handled ours. We, being the optimists that we are, because that's one of the beautiful things about America is we are optimistic as a people. We showed coverage of the video coming in live. We showed people actually watching this thing, minus the speed of light, watch our lander go down. And then you'd see the people jumping up and down and hugging each other and being excited because they've worked for months or years on these things and it's finally worked. The Chinese didn't do that. They just sort of after the fact said, oh yeah, it landed. It's fine. because they knew there was a much greater than zero chance their Connect's toy rover was going to crash and burn. I mean, congratulations on landing on your first try on Mars. It's a pretty poor track record for countries doing that.
Do we know that this is their first time? I mean, how many? What my question is, how many times do we not know about that they tried to land on Mars?
Good question.
That is a good question.
Actually, I can answer the question if you're interested, but you might. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this.
We are very short on time, and all we're really doing is just throwing shade at the Chinese because we can.
Yeah.
I don't even think it happened. I don't trust a goddamn word to come out of their state media.
Yeah,
To be completely honest.
I think their rover is lame, and I don't think it looks very good. And I'm pretty sure that Sora is not going to be swayed over to the Chinese rover.
No.
The Mars landing is
Does it
fake.
have a baby helicopter in its belly?
It doesn't. It doesn't have any of that.
Oh no. Not impressed.
Okay, so I know Sora wanted us to cover this one because you said you were laughing about this one at work.
Yes.
COVID-19 and I don't want you. Oh, you stupid thing. Go away. Go away.
But
Okay.
don't you want cookies?
COVID-19 and erectile dysfunction. Researchers find virus in penile tissue.
Mask up to keep it up.
Yeah, well, you got to be afraid because people were starting to get a little too comfortable. Now we find out that you might get dick COVID, and and then your junk won't work. So wear three masks, you bigot.
Wear a mask on your dick.
I mean, it's very interesting. So basically, they found traces of the COVID virus in penile tissue of people who had COVID long after they recovered. So now they're thinking that this is going to lead to endothelial dysfunction, which is what they have there, which can contribute to erectile dysfunction because basically it thins out the walls of the cells to the point where they cannot plump up like they're supposed to, and which helps our friends.
What we need is isn't there somebody you forgot to ask meme except with a picture of Dr. Fauci?
Yeah, no, Fauci is what people think about when they're trying not to climax too quickly.
It used to be baseball.
It used to be baseball. Now it's Fauci.
I have the song. I don't know how much to sing, but like, don't you know, pump it up. She's got to pump it up.
So anyway, if you get COVID, your dick's not going to work anymore. Okay, next story, and the last thing is, let's see, where is it?
No positive outlook.
No positive
Just
outlook.
ED.
Japanese town spends COVID-19 relief money on giant squid statue.
This made me crack up.
Congratulations,
Play the video?
Japan. You did it.
Is this the one with the kids?
Yeah, so this is what they did with their COVID money, because clearly they didn't have anything else more important to do. So here's a giant squid.
Yay,
Why not?
Japan.
Yeah.
I like the airbrushing, though.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, this is probably even better than anything else they could have done with the money because I can guarantee you this is going to give them a lot of tourism money.
What, because tentacles are just really popular in Japan? Is that what you're saying?
It's-
No, because
it's a-
stupid round eyes are going to
Well, yeah,
come from, Alabama to be like, yeah, check out this.
Look at this,
giant squid."
Gladys.
They're gonna bring their money and they're gonna
Yeah,
get
no,
more...
I'm being serious. Yeah.
Seriously. And because the
my God,
hentai
the squid
freaks
hole.
will be into it.
I want to crawl into the squid.
I was about to say, people are going to be like, I wonder what's in here. Let's go find out, shall we? Yeah. Donate $100 if you want me to climb into the hole. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's Narnia. It's Narnia. So anyway, gosh, let's see. We have just 4.5 minutes left if we're going to be punctual.
Sorry, I
Which
thought it
to-
was the video of the kids playing on the squid.
Well, we can't have everything. Sorry.
Damn global news.
Yeah, 13 meter long squid. Cost $228,500. This is your tax dollars at work.
Out of a
Hey.
total of 7.3 million in COVID relief, but still, I mean, that's insane.
Oh, there's the kids.
There they are. Yes.
They're the kids. That's so cute.
Yay,
Like
squid.
I love the little girl at the end who's like, "Oh, it's got me."
Oh, look, somebody's climbing in. No, Timmy.
Oh, I'm gonna go up the squid's butthole.
How long until some fat round eye gets stuck and they have to
Jerk.
cut the squid open?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, short round is stuck in there.
It's Boogie.
Short
It's Boogie
round.
2988.
Oh no.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, Assassin of the Great, don't overthink it. It's like don't let the facts intrude on a funny story at the end of the show.
It's meant to just laugh at it. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that is it for tonight's agenda. Does anybody have anything quick they'd like to say before we go?
I always do, but
You
I'd
like to go last.
I
so
like to
that's
go
good.
last if you don't mind.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to bring up an excerpt from Der Israelit. It's a Jewish weekly paper from Germany. This article was specifically from April 11th, 1935-ish. And it goes, everyone should calm down. Now that the Nazis are in power, we don't believe that Herr Hitler and his friends will do all the things that they promised. They won't suddenly take away the constitutional rights of German Jews. They won't lock us up in race ghettos or unleash the murderous mobs on us. They can't do these things because the Constitution won't let them.
Mm.
And I thought it was just not to because of what it is, but it's just very similar to what has happened in the last, what are we at, 125 days? Just saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not a happy note to end on. Do you have anything?
I'm
for us?
sorry.
No, it's okay. It needs
Always
to be
look
said.
on the bright side of life.
Thank you, Sora, for doing all the research. I appreciate it.
I'll be better next time.
No, that was really good. No, honestly. You hit like all the important bullet points.
Yeah, really good job.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So we thanked Sora. Geos,
Thank you.
Do you have any last puns that you wish to inflict on us, or are you good for tonight? Are you
I
satiated?
actually have a quote for a change.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been keeping track of some internet drama. I won't get into it because it's stupid, but as most of it is. But I've been watching Babylon 5, and there's
Something about diplomacy.
What season are you on?
Nerd.
like about I want to say a third of the way through season 4.
Cool, okay.
So yeah, but anyways, there's a quote that they have where they say, understanding is a three-edged blade, your side, their side, and the truth. And I feel like that's it's one of those things where I think it's actually a pretty good line in terms of, you know, it's good to just try and remind yourself that the whole point is just to parse through everything and try not to get so crammed into your own corner that you're not ignoring things. So
Yes. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
yes.
Anyway, SkepTok, the floor is yours.
All right. A couple of quotes from Naphtali Bennett, who comments about Israel quite a bit and about the Middle East. And the first one pertains to the fact that Iran is famously, offered to let us back into this terrible nuclear deal and to moderate the amount of centrifuging of uranium and uranium enrichment if we just pay them pallet loads of cash. And this is from Naphtali Bennett. She said, Iran doesn't need one centrifuge. Canada has nuclear energy. Spain has nuclear energy. Switzerland has nuclear energy. And they don't enrich uranium. You don't need to enrich uranium in order to use nuclear energy. You enrich uranium in order to produce a bomb. Okay. And the second quote from Bennett is, when you negotiate with terrorists, you get more terror.
Mm.
I want to keep that in mind. Sorry, I couldn't end on a happier note, Harry, but it has not been a happy week.
It's fine, and it's hard. It's hard to keep. It's hard to find happiness on some weeks, but at least we did get to see kids playing on a giant squid, so I'm thankful for that.
Thank goodness.
And it was my pleasure to hang out with you guys, my friends. I really enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you all for taking the time to be here with me tonight, and thank you, chat. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be a little more engaged with the chat, because I know there's some people in there that just have some really awesome comments. But just so you know, I actually do go back and check out the show afterward.
Cool.
And, you know, if I actually can find you on Discord, I'm more than happy to talk to people offline. In fact, I would be very interested in... tonight was the first night outside of sort of the core group. I brought in, somebody just to kind of mix it up a little bit, and that was Jax. So thanks for coming on tonight, Jack.
Who the fuck is
Thank
Jack?
you for having me.
Thank you, Jack.
It would be it'd be
Happy
fun
to have
and
you on.
interesting to get a few more sort of people kind of rotating in to kind of mix things up a little bit. So if you're actually interested in being on and you don't mind a little bit of reading and hanging out with people like us, definitely DM me, because I'm certainly looking for people who might want to come on sometime. And with that note, go ahead.
Sorry, just on that, if you are in the Minions server, do check the rules to make sure you are streamable so you can see the stream time chat. So
And
double check all of that you've done the roles, because that's very helpful in being able to chat with you on the Discord as well.
Yes.
And also, if that squid had been made in California, it would be referred to as a calamari.
Yay!
God, why did I not fire up my soundboard? Good night, everybody.
Bye,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Now I'm just depressed.